Let's start drafting the divorce papers. Giselle contacted a lawyer, exchanged a few brief words, and hung up the phone. This year marked the 5th anniversary of her marriage to Ollie, and the 3rd year of sleeping in separate beds. This marriage had already reached its end, with no further reason to sustain it. Lost in thought, a soft little body suddenly threw itself against her legs. "Mommy, are we really going to move?" her daughter asked in a sweet, childish voice. Giselle didn't answer immediately, but gently picked up her daughter and placed her on her lap. Gazing at her daughter's innocent little face, her heart was filled with mixed emotions. "But Dad, Uncle hugged me today. Does that mean he likes me a little?" Seeing the eager anticipation in her daughter's eyes, Giselle felt a sudden sting in her nose. How could she bear to tell her daughter that the affection she thought she'd received was merely a reflection of someone else's favor? Ollie's first love Edith has returned to the country, putting him in such a good mood that he's rarely this affectionate, and their daughter would likely never receive Uncle's affection. Moreover, Giselle knew all too well that Ollie had only ever felt disgust and resentment toward her and their daughter. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now the story begins. 5 years ago, Edith married another man and went abroad. Ollie started drowning his sorrows at the bar, and she, unable to rest easy, quietly followed behind. Yet the unexpected still happened. Someone had secretly slipped drugs into his drink. Giselle mustered all her strength to rescue him, but on the way to the hospital, he stubbornly resisted. "Giselle, take me to a hotel." He held her tightly, calling out her name repeatedly. Giselle was born into poverty and only managed to finish high school thanks to the financial support of the Norton family. During college, she worked part-time while studying and secured a position at a listed company through campus recruitment due to her outstanding academic performance. It was also during that time that she officially met Ollie. She felt grateful to the Norton family and admired the independent and strong Ollie even more, but the vast disparity in their social status had never allowed her to entertain any improper thoughts. Faced with Ollie's demand, her instinct was to refuse. But when Ollie actually reached for the steering wheel, causing the car to swerve violently on the road, she had no choice but to drive to the hotel. The next morning, when they woke up in the hotel's large bed, Ollie acted as if he had amnesia, completely forgetting that he had been the one to initiate things the night before, and instead insisted that she had deliberately approached and set him up. No matter how Giselle explained, he wouldn't believe her. In the end, Ollie married her out of so-called responsibility, but it was a secret marriage. After marriage, he treated her with extreme indifference, coming home only when he felt like it, not even bothering to inform her. To him, this home was no better than a hotel. Ollie was utterly indifferent to her and their daughter's lives. When their daughter was born, he didn't even glance at her before impatiently telling the maternity nurse to take her away. He wouldn't even allow his daughter to call him daddy. When his 1.5-year-old daughter, just beginning to babble, joyfully threw herself into his arms and called out daddy, he reacted as if touching something filthy, immediately tossing her onto the tree-lined path outside the garden, shutting the door, and remaining indifferent to her desperate cries. By the time Giselle heard the commotion and came downstairs, the little girl's voice was nearly hoarse from crying. A tiny figure sat on the pebble-strewn path, face smeared with tears and snot, stretching out her small hands toward Giselle and sobbing for a hug. She questioned the nanny about why she hadn't kept an eye on her daughter, only to receive the answer that Ollie found the girl disobedient and deliberately threw her out. Recalling these memories, Giselle felt her eyes redden as she tightly embraced her daughter. "Cherry, Uncle wants to live his own life and doesn't like being disturbed by us." She tried to steady her voice. "Mom will take you abroad, to a more beautiful and fun place." "Okay." Cherry wrapped her arms around her mother's neck, pouting as large teardrops rolled down her cheeks, sobbing. "But Mom, I really want Uncle to stay with us." Giselle choked back a sob and said softly, "Cherry, the person your uncle likes has returned. We should give them some space." Cherry's little head, which had been tilted upward, slowly drooped. Tears fell drop by drop onto Giselle's clothes, leaving wet stains. After a long while, Cherry finally spoke in a muffled voice. "Mom, let's give Uncle one last chance. If he still can't see how good we are, then we'll go abroad, so he can never find us again." "Okay." The first time, Ollie forgot Cherry's 3rd birthday. The second time, he promised to attend Cherry's parent-teacher meeting but stood his daughter up, until every child in the kindergarten had been picked up by their parents. Cherry still stood alone by her seat, utterly at a loss, so Cherry said she'd give him one last chance. For several days in a row, Ollie never set foot in this home again. Young as she was, Cherry still stubbornly clung to a sliver of hope for Ollie in her heart. Giselle knew that Ollie would never change, he never would before, and now that Edith had returned, he certainly wouldn't, and so, Giselle quietly began preparing to leave, the moment she received the divorce papers. She handed in her resignation to the company. The chairman quickly called Giselle into his office, closed the door, and asked with a concerned expression, "Have headhunters been poaching you? Whatever offer other companies are giving you, just say it, we can definitely negotiate here." Giselle shook her head with a wry smile. "Chairman, it's not about the money, I just want to give my child a fresh start by moving to a new environment. Life is short, I hope she can see the wider world. Not like me, trapped here." 5 years had been enough for her to face reality. She no longer held on to the hope that Ollie would one day turn back and glance at her, even if just once. The chairman slightly furrowed his brows and asked in a lowered voice, "Is it relationship trouble? I heard the child's father is from the Norton family conglomerate." "No," Giselle immediately interjected, "his father died in a car accident. That's exactly why I want to dedicate more time to my daughter and not miss out on her growing up." The chairman nodded thoughtfully. "Very well, but if you ever want to come back, the company's doors will always be open for you." After a pause, he added, "Actually, over the years, I've heard quite a few rumors about you and Ollie, but I never believed them. After all, I met he, never mind, let's not talk about it." Hearing this, Giselle couldn't help but curl her lips into a self-mocking smile. How ironic it is that everyone knows Ollie who occupies her heart, yet she remained stubbornly deluded in this hopeless affection for so many years. Only now finally willing to wake up, she blinked her slightly sore eyes, mustered her spirits, and completed the resignation procedures, stepping out of the office and just returning to the lobby. She saw Ollie and Edith walking in side by side. Whispers arose from those nearby. "Hey, isn't that Norton Family Group's Ollie? Who's that woman beside him?" "You don't know, that's Ollie's first love, the Milan family heiress studying financial management at a prestigious foreign university. She's so beautiful. No wonder Ollie hasn't had any female companions around him these years. Turns out his heart's been taken all along." Giselle felt as if her heart was being pricked by needles. The pain so intense she could barely breathe. Ollie hid her and their daughter away so thoroughly, as if they had never existed in his world, yet the moment Edith returned home, he couldn't wait to parade her around, practically shouting to the world that his beloved had come back. Love and indifference are indeed worlds apart. In the early days of their marriage, Giselle was full of hope. Determined to build a happy home, she naively believed that as long as she put in enough effort, given time, Ollie's heart would eventually make room for her and her daughter. Yet time flew by, 5 years passing in the blink of an eye. Her wholehearted devotion was met with nothing but daily indifference and neglect. Her unrequited affection had ultimately been in vain. It was time to let go of this futile fantasy. Now, Giselle stood in the hall, watching as Ollie and Edith walked hand in hand toward her. Outwardly calm, she was inwardly filled with self-mockery. Regardless, as someone who had once received financial support from the Norton family and as the company's liaison with the Norton Group, she felt it necessary to step forward and greet them, while also informing them of her resignation. However, she had barely taken a few steps forward when she met Ollie's utterly distant and guarded gaze. "What is it, Ms. Giselle? Do you have something to say?" Ollie's tone was icy, laced with a hint of warning. As if fearing she might say something inappropriate that would ruin his precious time with Edith, Giselle's forced smile froze instantly on her face, and her footsteps came to an abrupt halt. She had overthought it. Ollie now had eyes only for Edith, so why would he care about someone as insignificant as her, let alone whether she resigned or left? Her brows trembled slightly as she struggled to maintain her last shred of dignity. "Sorry, Ollie, I mistook you for someone else." Ollie, satisfied with the response, gave a slight nod before linking arms with Edith and walking past her without so much as a glance, as if there had never been any connection between them. Yet he was legally her husband, the father of her daughter. Logically, even if she and her daughter were to leave, they should have informed Ollie. But judging by Ollie's attitude, it was clear he wouldn't care at all. He wouldn't care where they went, nor would he care if they ever came back. Giselle took a deep breath, shook her head mockingly, stopped dwelling on it, and strode out the door. After leaving the company, she drove straight home and packed her bags simply. Estimating the time was about right, she went to the kindergarten as usual to pick up Cherry. From afar, she spotted Cherry with her 2 little pigtails, standing out distinctly among the group of children. She raised a smile and waved in greeting. Cherry shouted excitedly, "Mommy," and came running over. But as she approached the car and realized the long-awaited figure wasn't inside, her smile vanished instantly. her cheeks puffing up in disappointment. Where's Uncle? Why didn't he come? He promised to celebrate my birthday with me. Did he have to work overtime again? Or, did he forget my birthday again? Giselle sighed inwardly. This might be the last birthday Cherry could spend with Ollie before leaving. Uncle must be working overtime again. Let's send him a reminder message, Mom. Then go home and wait for him. Okay. Cherry immediately brightened up upon hearing this, her face lighting up with a smile and eyes brimming with anticipation as she nodded vigorously. Giselle sent a WeChat reminder to Ollie before taking Cherry home. Half an hour later, Ollie replied to the message. She relayed, Cherry, Uncle said he'll come pick us up at home later. Great. Cherry jumped up excitedly from the couch. We'll get to see Uncle soon. I knew he wouldn't forget, Mom. I really think Uncle might like me a little. Otherwise, why would he agree to celebrate my birthday with me? Watching her daughter's innocent expression, Giselle felt her heart swell with tenderness as she gently stroked the girl's head. She understood that Cherry was so desperate for her father's love that she kept emphasizing how much Ollie cared about her, simply hoping she would give Ollie another chance. In truth, a faint glimmer of hope flickered in her own heart, wishing that this time Ollie would truly keep his promise, return, and look back at them, who had been waiting for him all this time. Yet the experiences of the past few years, like cold scars, constantly reminded her that Ollie would most likely never turn back. So, Giselle didn't respond, only offering a faint smile as she watched Cherry happily picking out clothes in front of the wardrobe. Today is Cherry's 4th birthday. In the past, whether it was her 1st, 2nd, or 3rd birthday, Ollie never showed up. This time, it's the first he's agreed to celebrate Cherry's birthday with her. Yet, the sky gradually darkened, the agreed-upon time had long passed, Ollie was nowhere to be seen, and the messages sent out vanished like clay oxen entering the sea, utterly unanswered. Until the streetlights outside the window lit up one by one, their dim yellow glow spilling into the living room. Cherry could no longer hold back, her eyes reddening as she clung tightly to Giselle's neck, pleading in a tearful voice. Mommy, do you think Uncle got held up by something? Can we call him, please? Giselle couldn't bear to refuse her daughter and reluctantly took out her phone. Cherry carefully cradled her phone with both hands as she dialed the familiar number. To her surprise, the call was answered instantly. Yet what came through was the high-pitched voice of a child. Hello, who is this? What do you want? Cherry was stunned for several seconds upon hearing the little boy's words on the phone before cautiously asking, This is Cherry. Who are you? Where's Uncle? I'm Noah. Uncle, do you mean Daddy Ollie? Daddy Ollie is cooking porridge for me in the kitchen. When he comes out, I'll have him call you back. Daddy Ollie, why are you calling Uncle Daddy? Cherry was filled with confusion, her voice tinged with a trace of unease. On the other end of the phone, Noah began to grow impatient. That's what Daddy Ollie and Mom told me to call you. Do you need something? If not, I'm hanging up. Then don't forget to tell Uncle that Cherry is looking for him. Before the words could even be finished, there was a beep as Noah directly hung up the call. Cherry's eyes instantly dimmed. Like a discarded little animal, pitifully nestling in Giselle's arms, her small body trembling slightly. Not long after, Ollie updated his social media feed. In the photo, an adorable mixed-race boy was holding a bowl of seafood congee. Eating with evident relish, Giselle stared at the screen, her fingers moving subconsciously as she tapped the like button. But she never expected that the very next second, Ollie would call her. What do you mean, Giselle? Ollie's voice was hoarse. As if thoroughly provoked, Edith had an important last-minute meeting and couldn't watch the kids, so she had to ask me for help. Don't comment with inappropriate words on social media. Stop these pointless actions. Keep your petty thoughts to yourself, or don't blame me for being impolite. After all, you know what status Edith and I hold. You're in no position to entertain any other delusions. Giselle felt a dense, prickling pain deep in her heart. 5 years had passed. Yet Ollie still insisted on believing she'd schemed her way into his bed, deliberately climbing the social ladder. Giselle tightened her grip on her phone, unable to suppress a mocking retort. Did I say anything? I merely like to post. Why overthink it? Today is your biological daughter's birthday. Forget about drinking a sip of the porridge you made. Even having a meal with you requires repeated appointments. That Milan family is so wealthy. How come they can't even afford a nanny for the child? Why do you need to? At this point, she paused and swallowed the second half of her sentence. Be so eager to serve them. Even now, she couldn't bring herself to say something too harsh to him. She hated her own weakness, hated that she still couldn't let go. The bitterness in her heart surged like violent tides, threatening to completely drown her. Meanwhile, Cherry had already started crying pitifully. She covered Gazelle's mouth with her tiny soft hands and said tearfully, "Mommy, please don't argue with Uncle anymore. Don't worry, since I promised to celebrate Cherry's birthday today, I won't go back on my word, but birthdays come every year. If something happens to Noah, how could I explain it to Edith? Can't you be more understanding? Why take it out on a child? As for whether it's necessary or not, that's none of your business. Alright, that's enough." Ollie hung up the phone without another word. "Mom, let's go, let's never come back again." Cherry sobbed uncontrollably in Gazelle's arms. "Uncle is a bad person. I don't like him at all anymore. I don't want him to celebrate my birthday with me." Hearing her daughter's words that betrayed her true feelings, Gazelle felt a piercing pain in her heart. Suppressing her own sorrow, she held her daughter tightly, gently patting her back. Her throat felt constricted, and it took great effort to utter even a single syllable. "Okay." But before long, the phone dinged with a message from Ollie. "Tell Cherry not to sleep yet. I'll be home within an hour." Cherry heard the noise and reflexively lifted her head, her tear-reddened eyes glimmering with faint yet fervent hope as she gazed pleadingly at Gazelle. Gazelle hesitated for a moment, unable to bear the thought of Cherry leaving with her last wish unfulfilled. So she brought the phone to her and said softly, "Uncle will be back within an hour." Cherry froze for a moment, then immediately perked up with a cheerful smile, before starting to make excuses for Ollie, as if trying to convince herself, it must be that Noah was being unreasonable and kept pestering Uncle, which is why he couldn't come back right away. So even if Uncle can't make it home within an hour, we should still wait for him, as long as he comes back before midnight. It means he still cares about me and likes me a little. After saying this, she nodded firmly, wriggled out of Gazelle's arms, and trotted off with her little legs clomp 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 to the wardrobe. She took out the small crown she had prepared earlier and carefully placed it on her head. Standing in front of the mirror, she carefully smoothed out every wrinkle on her white princess dress before turning to ask Gazelle, "Mom, does this look pretty? I remember Uncle said girls must always be beautiful and refined, keeping clean and neat at all times." Gazelle paused, her eyes instantly reddening as waves of heartache washed over her. Every time Ollie came home, Cherry would do everything to stay by his side, treasuring even those brief moments together, just to have a few more words with Ollie. At such a young age, she memorized all of his preferences to please her uncle. There was one time when Gazelle was busy fixing a major mistake made by her team in a project and couldn't spare time to take care of Cherry, so she had to ask a friend to come over and help. The friend brought their own child to play with Cherry, and the two little ones had a blast playing house in the backyard. Coincidentally, Ollie came back unexpectedly that day. Normally so particular about etiquette and propriety, he actually changed his expression on the spot when he saw this scene. Roughly yanking Cherry up from the ground with a voice full of chilling coldness, "Cherry, look at what a state you're in. Covered in filth like this, where's any trace of a proper young lady? Go back to your room and wash up immediately, and don't come out until you're spotless." Cherry ran back to her room crying in fright. Knowing their family situation, the friend sent her a message to avoid causing trouble before hastily leaving. Later, Gazelle made Cherry a bowl of ginger milk curd. Cherry found it spicy, but remembering how much Ollie loved spicy food, she pestered Gazelle to teach her how to make it, vowing to prepare it for Ollie when he returned. From then on, uncertain when Ollie would come home, Cherry made a bowl of ginger milk curd daily with Gazelle's help, eagerly awaiting the day Ollie could taste it. Yet a month had passed, Ollie was nowhere to be seen. Recalling these memories and looking at the joyfully expectant Cherry, Gazelle felt as if an invisible hand were squeezing her heart tightly, the pain unbearable. She could only silently pray in her heart that Ollie would return on time this time, with no further mishaps. Before leaving, she truly hoped her daughter's final wish could be fulfilled. Yet as the clock on the wall chimed repeatedly, drawing closer to midnight, there was still no sign of Ollie's car downstairs. Just then, Edith updated her social media feed. "Noah can't bear to be apart from Daddy Ollie anymore." The accompanying photo showed the same little boy, his face streaked with tears, clinging desperately to Ollie's leg and refusing to let go. Gazelle slowly turned her head to look at Cherry, who had been lying by the window, gazing intently outside. Clearly Cherry was Ollie's biological daughter, yet Ollie lavished all her tenderness and patience on the child Edith had brought home. And Cherry had never known her father's presence since birth. Gazelle opened her mouth, feeling as if a thorn were lodged in her throat. She didn't know how to tell Cherry that the father she had been longing for seemed to have abandoned her once again. The clock's drawn-out chime sounded. It was midnight. Cherry turned around to look at Gazelle, her lips pressed tightly together, her little face scrunched up in distress. She let out a heavy sigh. Looking as if she had aged several years in an instant, Seems Uncle is truly busy and won't be coming back anymore. Gazelle looked at Cherry, whose eyes were clearly reddened yet feigned indifference, and felt an unbearable weight of sorrow in her heart. She knew that Ollie wasn't busy at all, he had simply given all his fatherly love to another child. Yet some truths are too cruel for Cherry, even if both parties are fully aware, they must remain unspoken. Gazelle stepped forward, embracing Cherry while whispering comforting words. It's all right, Cherry, Mommy will always be with you. Okay, right now there should be a fireworks show at the sports new town. How about Mommy drives you there to see the fireworks? Sweetheart. Cherry rested her little face against Gazelle's chest, nodding slightly with teary eyes while mustering a faint smile. Okay, having Mom with me is enough. On the way to the sports new town, Gazelle and Cherry tacitly avoided mentioning the birthday or Ollie, as if the earlier unpleasantness had never occurred. After the car came to a stop, Gazelle held her daughter's small hand and walked toward the park entrance. This area near the outskirts of City A is the only legally permitted zone for setting off fireworks in the entire city. During holidays, crowds always flock here for this very reason. Today coincidentally marks the annual anniversary of the New City Fireworks Association's founding, with exhibition stalls filled with exquisite fireworks rarely seen on ordinary days. Cherry had always loved watching fireworks most, and upon arriving here, her spirits immediately lifted. Little one, take a look and see if there's anything you like. These are all really good. Ask your mom to set them off for you. They're so beautiful when they burst in the sky. The vendor greeted them warmly. Cherry had never seen so many novel types of fireworks before, and her eyes instantly lit up as she eagerly began picking them out. Suddenly, her eyes sparkled with excitement as she exclaimed, "Mom, this one's shaped like a lotus, it's Uncle's favorite flower." The salesperson was charmed by Cherry's adorably sweet voice and explained with a smile, "This is a special commemorative item, the only one in the whole store. When lit, it creates a lotus flower shape in the sky. If the little one likes it, better ask Mom to buy it quickly, or it'll be gone soon." Cherry turned her head, eyes sparkling as she looked at Gazelle, full of anticipation. Gazelle shook her head in amusement and was just about to say she'd buy it. At that moment, a little boy suddenly rushed over and snatched away the lotus-shaped firework. "Uncle, I want this one." Cherry glared angrily at the blonde-haired boy who had appeared out of nowhere. "What are you doing? I saw it first." Gazelle looked closely and recognized the little boy as Noah, who had appeared in Edith's social media posts. She instinctively furrowed her brows. What were they doing here? Noah ignored Cherry, tossed the money onto the stall, grabbed the lotus firework, and ran off. Cherry tugged angrily at Gazelle's sleeve. "Mom, what are you thinking about? Someone snatched the fireworks away." Even though we saw them first, Gazelle snapped back to reality and crouched down with a guilty heart. "It's Mom's fault. I should have been quicker to help Cherry pay for them. Tell you what, Cherry, if you still want those lotus fireworks, I'll have someone specially make an identical set tomorrow." "Okay." Cherry immediately brightened up upon hearing she could still get the lotus fireworks. "Mom, you're the best. Then we can just invite Uncle to come set off fireworks with us here." Gazelle didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm, so she didn't say anything more. She took Cherry's hand again, stood up, picked up the other selected fireworks, and prepared to find an open space to let Cherry enjoy herself to the fullest. But after just a few steps, Cherry suddenly stopped in her tracks, refusing to budge no matter how hard Gazelle pulled. Gazelle looked down at the little one with confusion. "Cherry, what's wrong?" Cherry exclaimed with flushed cheeks, her voice ringing out. "Mommy, that looks like Uncle. Is this a surprise you planned together for me?" Gazelle followed Cherry's pointing finger and immediately spotted Ollie buying candied hawthorns. Before she could speak, Cherry had already jumped up with a laugh, waving excitedly as the word Dad burst from her lips. "Dad, Dad, I'm here." Seeing that Ollie didn't react, she assumed he hadn't heard and eagerly ran toward Ollie. Yet, this excitement didn't last long. Cherry reached Ollie, but Ollie stepped back, holding the freshly bought candied hawthorn skewer, his gaze toward Cherry as cold as if she were a stranger. Cherry involuntarily lowered the hand that was about to tug at Ollie's sleeve, standing frozen in place, utterly at a loss. Just then, a small, chubby figure came barreling over, knocking Cherry aside. "Daddy Ollie, did you get the candied hawthorns I wanted to eat?" This scene was witnessed by Gazelle, who, frantic with worry, rushed forward to help Cherry up, asking anxiously, "Cherry, are you hurt?" Ollie instinctively wanted to step forward to see what was happening, but his footsteps came to an abrupt halt when he spotted Edith approaching. He quickly pulled Noah close, shielding him behind his back. "I'm really sorry. Our Noah didn't mean it. Let me apologize on his behalf." Cherry pouted in grievance and hastily hid behind Gazelle. Before Gazelle could say anything, Edith stepped forward with an apologetic expression. I remember seeing you before, you're Ms. Gazelle, right? Quite a renowned figure in the industry, Edith said politely. I'm really sorry. This is my child Noah, he doesn't know any better. After speaking, she turned to Noah, pulled him to her side, crouched down, gently hugged him, and said, Noah, what does mommy usually teach you? Quickly apologized to the little girl. Noah gave a light hum, but still obediently said I'm sorry to Cherry. Then Edith caught sight of the fireworks clutched in Gazelle's hand and immediately recognized they were freshly purchased. Looks like you're planning to find a spot to set off fireworks with the kids too. We just set up a canopy over there, plenty of space and fewer people. Perfect for fireworks. Plus, we've got lots of toys and snacks kids love prepared there. Why not join us? Gazelle instinctively glanced at Ollie upon hearing this, only to meet his evasive gaze head-on. She knew in her heart that he was afraid she might say something she shouldn't. In a daze, Gazelle felt as if she had returned to the day Edith first came back, that always composed, aloof Ollie, for the first time in years, had his eyes redden for Edith again. Then, she fixed them, mother and son, with a heavy gaze. Because Edith got divorced and came back with a child, wanting Ollie to become the child's stepfather, and the mother and daughter became obstacles preventing him from returning to his beloved, Gazelle instinctively wanted to refuse. But Cherry gently tugged at Gazelle's hand and said in a muffled voice, Mom, I want to go. Edith immediately grabbed Gazelle's hand without another word and led the way forward. Ollie, you hold this little girl's hand, and let's all walk together. This was Cherry's first time being led by Ollie. Although Gazelle truly didn't want to have any further entanglement with Ollie, seeing Cherry's delighted expression, she thought to herself that since it would be the last time anyway, there was no need to spoil the child's excitement. When they arrived at the spot, Edith took out some sparklers suitable for children and handed them to Cherry, then asked Noah to play with Cherry, reminding them to be careful with the newly bought fireworks nearby and not accidentally light them. Edith, after settling the two children, said she needed to fetch some things from the car and asked Ollie to take Gazelle to the canopy for a short rest before leaving. But before long, sudden shouts of argument erupted, and to everyone's surprise, Noah and Cherry started shoving each other. Ollie and Gazelle, seeing this, quickly stood up and hurried toward them. Noah was a year older than Cherry and noticeably stronger. With a deliberate forceful push from him, Cherry, caught completely off guard, had no time to react. Cherry subconsciously worried that her white princess dress would get stained, so she instinctively braced herself with her hands as she fell. Cherry. Gazelle rushed forward with concern, immediately pulling Cherry into her arms. Then she saw Cherry's delicate little hands, scraped raw by the rough concrete, the shocking sight of those bloody scratches instantly igniting fury in her eyes. What's wrong with you, kid? Why do you always push people? Gazelle glared angrily and loudly questioned Noah. Ollie frowned tightly upon seeing Cherry's wound. Yet, the next second, he firmly defended Noah. Ms. Gazelle, don't speak so harshly. There might be some misunderstanding here. Gazelle stared at Ollie in disbelief, a bone-chilling cold instantly spreading through her body as if her blood was slowly freezing. She never expected that Ollie would completely disregard the injured Cherry and openly defend Noah without hesitation. Cherry was his own daughter after all. Cherry's eyes turned completely red, her sorrowful tears welling up and swirling in her eyes. Edith hurried back and, seeing the conflict had flared up again, could only offer Gazelle an apologetic smile before giving Noah a few light smacks on the bottom and scolding him. Noah, why did you push your little sister again? Apologize right now, Noah retorted impatiently, shouting, I won't apologize. She tried to steal Daddy Ollie from me, how shameless. In an instant, the atmosphere seemed to freeze, becoming suffocating. Edith instantly restrained her smile, slowly straightened up, and cast an inscrutable glance at Gazelle. Dropping the matter of making Noah apologize and abruptly changing the subject, Ms. Gazelle, where's the child's father? Is he here? Let me drive you to the hospital to get that bandaged. By now, Gazelle had reached the peak of her fury. No longer caring about propriety, she only wanted to tear apart the false facade Ollie had been so desperate to maintain. But she never expected Cherry to speak up first. My dad is already dead, he died in a car accident. Gazelle was utterly shocked. Immediately looking down at Cherry, whose eyes were brimming with tears yet stubbornly holding them back, refusing to let them fall, Gazelle felt the anger in her heart instantly deflate. Cherry stared intently at Ollie, forcing out a smile that looked more painful than tears. Uncle, Mom, and I won't disturb you anymore. We'll be leaving now. At the moment of turning away, Ollie seemed struck by something, suddenly reaching out to grab Cherry, his pupils trembling violently. Eyes filled with utter disbelief. "Cherry, what did you just say?" Giselle felt the situation bitterly ironic, forcefully shaking off Ollie's hand that was holding Cherry, saying coldly, "Ollie, it's my daughter's birthday today, we're going to set off fireworks." With that, Giselle ignored Ollie's persistent gaze, hugged Cherry tightly, and strode away without looking back. Giselle first carried Cherry back to the car, carefully applied medicine to her wounds, and then took her to a secluded, sparsely populated clearing. Brilliant fireworks bloomed one after another in the sky, beautiful yet fleeting, just like Cherry's hopes for Ollie. Early the next morning, Giselle carefully gathered all the photos of her and Cherry from around the house and tucked them into a hidden compartment of her suitcase. After completing all this, she took Cherry to the airport. In the waiting room, she remained silent, only sending an electronic divorce agreement to Ollie's email. Just as she was about to turn off her phone, Ollie's call suddenly came through. Giselle didn't hesitate for a second and hung up the call directly. Then came the blocking and deleting, as if determined to discard all those years of memories like trash, completely casting them out of mind. She and Cherry were no longer willing to stay put waiting for Ollie any longer. As the boarding announcement sounded, Giselle picked up Cherry and boarded the plane with the crowd. After settling into their seats, Giselle had just fastened Cherry's seatbelt when she felt a gentle tap on her arm. "Mommy, is the sun in the sky about to come out?" Cherry's childish voice was full of anticipation. Giselle smiled gently and replied, "Yes. When the plane takes off, we'll be able to see a brilliant sunrise." Soon, the plane slowly ascended into the sky. Cherry gazed out the airplane window as dazzling light gradually illuminated the surrounding clouds, its radiance reflected in her eyes that now held a sense of release. Meanwhile, Ollie knitted his brows tightly, staring fixedly at his phone. No matter how many times he dialed, all he heard was the automated message. "The number you have dialed is not in service." Ollie sat on the living room sofa at Edith's house, staring at his phone screen as he sank into deep thought. An inexplicable panic began spreading through his heart, as though something vitally important was slowly being pulled away from his world. He realized that yesterday he had indeed been too eager to defend Noah and had overlooked Cherry's feelings, handling the situation unfairly. But Noah was inherently a willful and temperamental child, unlike Cherry, who had always been sensible and magnanimous, never causing him any trouble. At the time, he had favored Noah simply to avoid escalating the conflict, not for any particular reason. Yet, as he thought of his daughter, who had been left behind time and again, Ollie couldn't help but feel a twinge of guilt in his heart. "Daddy Ollie, will you tell me a story? I really want to hear you tell a story." Noah hugged the storybook and came bouncing over. Ollie snapped out of his thoughts and forced a faint smile, replying, "Sure." With that, Noah pulled into the bedroom. Ollie looked down at Noah lying on the bed, absent-mindedly picked up the storybook, and began half-heartedly telling the tale to lull him to sleep. Somehow, it suddenly occurred to him that he had never told Cherry a story, nor did he know if his daughter was as well behaved when going to sleep as she usually appeared. Gradually, Noah's breathing grew heavier. Ollie had a sudden whim to stop by home before heading to the office, so he tiptoed out of Noah's bedroom and headed to the living room. Ready to grab his bag and leave, just as Ollie was about to pick up his bag, the sudden sound of Edith's voice from behind interrupted his movement. Ollie straightened up and turned around to see Edith dressed in a striking red gown, causing him to frown involuntarily. Edith, her fashion sense wasn't like this before. He would always remember how she looked when he first saw her in college. At that time, she wore a white mask, dressed in a white shirt paired with a black long skirt, and politely yet gently took the initiative to help him fetch the meeting materials. In comparison, Giselle's monochrome wardrobe of black, white, and grey suited his taste better. She always gave off a crisp and tidy vibe, never like Edith now, dressed in overly eye-catching, flashy colors that seemed gaudy. Edith noticed Ollie staring at her again, lost in thought, and assumed he was crushing on her like before. She couldn't help but shake her head with amusement, a hint of smugness flickering in her eyes. "Ollie, I heard you brought Noah back. I was worried you might not be feeling well, so I rushed over to check on you. That project I signed the other day, you remember it, right? The progress has been way too slow lately, and the whole team is getting a bit anxious. Could you put in a word with your people to give me the green light? That way I can deliver results sooner and show the Milan family what Edith is truly capable of." As Edith approached, despite her strong floral perfume trying to mask the acrid scent of tobacco, the lingering alcohol from her recent drinking session created a nauseating cocktail that made Ollie gag unexpectedly. nearly vomiting on the spot. Edith wasn't as considerate as Giselle. Giselle had somehow learned long ago of his aversion to these smells and, no matter how stressful work became, had abstained from smoking and drinking all these years. Moreover, Giselle never blurred professional boundaries like Edith, nor so naturally demanded he pull strings to grant special favors. This behavior made Ollie feel somewhat resistant deep down. After all, asking him for favors and him offering willingly were entirely different matters. Edith mentioned this project was originally intended for Giselle's company, but Edith, eager to prove herself to the Milan family, wore Ollie down until he reluctantly decided to break the contract. Not only that, to accommodate Edith, he even readjusted the profit-sharing ratio and awarded the project to the Milan family. This marked the first major concession he'd made in all his years managing the company. At the time, Giselle had a huge argument with him over this. There isn't a more professional team in the entire industry for this project than ours. What could Edith and that completely unqualified ragtag team of hers possibly accomplish in this field? Could you please get a grip, Ollie? No matter what, you shouldn't gamble with the entire group's interests. Giselle was so frantic that she spoke harshly to him for the first time. Yet Ollie showed no mercy whatsoever toward Giselle. Giselle, my decisions are not yours to meddle with. You may be professionals, but if Edith wants it, everyone else better step aside. The worst outcome is just paying compensation, isn't it? The Norton family has plenty of money, we can afford it. Didn't you think back then that as long as you had money, you could do anything? Wasn't it because you wanted to climb the social ladder that you targeted me, hoping to use me as a stepping stone? Too bad for you. Even after marrying me, you still insisted on keeping everything strictly business. Regretting it now, too late. Looking back now, Ollie couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. He had to admit, Giselle was right. Ever since the project was handed over to the Milan family, his subordinates had been constantly complaining about the poor quality of the project and the blatant embezzlement of funds at every level, which made progress extremely difficult. Ollie, you mustn't forget to tell the people below, go easy on us. Okay, some things can be let slide. No need to be so particular, Edith said with an ingratiating smile. Ollie lifted his eyelids and gave Edith a long, disappointed look. This project is important precisely because the tender explicitly stated quality inspection would be a key focus. Work is no child's play. What you call close enough is actually miles apart. Quality is the top priority, and no exceptions will be made. Edith felt her heart skip a beat under Ollie's piercing gaze. Sensing he might have noticed something, quickly softening her tone, she coaxed, I'm sorry, Ollie, I know I was wrong. I'll make sure they pay full attention to quality. Seeing Ollie's expression ease slightly, she couldn't resist muttering under her breath, but the budget still needs. Enough, Ollie impatiently cut her off. Whatever it is can wait until we get to the office. Talking about these things at home is hardly appropriate. Edith had rarely seen Ollie treat her so seriously since he fell for her. Feeling wronged, her eyes reddened as she stepped forward and gently squeezed Ollie's shoulders. All right, I won't say any more. Ollie looked at Edith's expression and knew she hadn't taken any of it to heart. He shook his head in frustration. He took over the Norton family conglomerate from his father and, within just a few years, led the group to unprecedented heights, achieving record-breaking performance all through his own genuine capabilities. In Ollie's eyes, appearance, figure, and height were merely superficial traits, nothing more than icing on the cake. For scions of prestigious families like them, personal competence was the true foundation of survival and success. He knew full well that Edith was far less capable than Giselle, someone who needed to cling to others to thrive. Unfortunately, matters of the heart have never been governed by reason, even though he knew full well Edith hid selfishness, greed, and hypocrisy beneath her gentle and considerate facade. The mere thought of how she looked when he first met her in college made it impossible for him to harden his heart and break free from the tender trap she had woven, let alone refuse her various demands. At this thought, Ollie's mind drifted away unconsciously, and in a daze, he found himself thinking of Giselle once again. Giselle was naturally more striking in appearance than Edith. Her demeanor was clean and refreshing, her figure graceful, and from her outward image to her interpersonal conduct, she aligned far more closely with Ollie's preferences. In daily life, Giselle enjoyed an impeccable reputation, except when facing Ollie. When her emotions could fluctuate dramatically, she always remained composed and elegant. She never leveraged Ollie's name to secure projects, fighting her way up through sheer capability. Within just a few years, she made a name for herself in the industry. Becoming a highly regarded expert, Giselle was introverted by nature, with an innate pride. In front of Ollie, She spoke sparingly. Ollie knew she had been quietly striving, hoping one day to stand shoulder to shoulder with him, no matter how arduous the path or how insurmountable the gap between them seemed. Yet she never clung to him like Edith, persistently demanding special favors. If it were Giselle standing before him now, she would never utter those words that disgusted him. At this thought, Ollie's expression grew increasingly weary. He began doubting his current choices, yet couldn't determine whether any of this was worth it. He forced composure, keeping his tone deliberately calm, unwilling to reveal the turmoil within. Enough. I've already made sufficient concessions during the project's initial phase. I shouldn't interfere too much going forward. You may go about your work. Edith wanted to try one more time. Ollie, let's go. Let me rest for a while first. Ollie said firmly. Edith had no choice but to swallow her words and obediently leave. Ollie felt utterly exhausted, both physically and mentally, collapsing onto the sofa. For some reason, today's Edith appeared particularly flamboyant, like a peacock strutting about, vastly different from how he remembered her. The years apart seemed to have truly changed her in many ways. Ollie was acutely aware at this moment that what he yearned for might just be the memory of their youthful, reckless love, not the present-day Edith. Perhaps, with the passage of time, his feelings for Edith would gradually fade until they disappeared. When that time comes, he can return to his family. After all, Cherry is his own flesh and blood, and the Norton family business will naturally be passed on to his own child in the future. Thinking this, Ollie took out his phone and sent a WeChat message to Giselle. Want to go on a trip together this weekend? There are hot springs in the neighboring city. Our family of 3 could go soak in them. Feeling his words were too blunt, he added Edith's favorite cute sticker. But half an hour passed, and there was still no response from the other side. In the past, Giselle would reply to his messages instantly. What's going on here? Ollie shook his head, glanced at his watch, and forced himself to sober up. It was time to head to the office. At the office, Ollie suddenly remembered that the people from Milan's family were waiting in the conference room for a meeting. Edith approached, handed him a cup of coffee, and asked softly, Ollie, what's wrong? You look terrible. Ollie frowned at the unanswered message on his phone, growing increasingly irritated. It's fine. Go ahead with the meeting without me. I'm not feeling well. Truth be told, a meeting of this level didn't require his personal attendance anyway. Also, from now on, address me as Ollie at the office. Even though we've known each other for years, this is a professional setting. We should maintain proper decorum. Edith looked at Ollie in astonishment, feeling as if he'd taken the wrong medicine. Never before had he spoken to her in such a brusque tone. Ollie turned and entered the chairman's private elevator. Edith subconsciously tried to follow, but was stopped by Ollie's secretary. Ollie, Edith's voice carried a hint of panic. After all, without Ollie's support, delivering the Milan family project successfully would be extremely difficult. Moreover, Ollie's current state was almost identical to when her ex-husband had asked for a divorce. No, she had to think of a way. She couldn't just stand by and watch Ollie grow increasingly distant from her. By evening, Ollie still hadn't received any reply from Giselle. Deep down, he knew the wounds he'd inflicted on Giselle and Cherry couldn't be healed overnight. But fortunately, time was on his side. He felt there was still a chance to make things right. He remembered yesterday was Cherry's birthday. After work, he planned to stop by the dessert shop Noah loved to buy a small cake, thinking children's tastes might not be so different, so he sent another message to Giselle, informing her that he would be home soon. But just as he arrived at the underground parking lot, Ollie received an urgent call from the director of a business partner. The caller mentioned that a massive project had encountered serious issues and urgently required him to fly over immediately to guide the countermeasures and salvage the situation. This meant he wouldn't be back for at least a few days. Ollie hung up the phone and looked at the previous message that had gone unanswered. He still explained to Giselle why he couldn't return home, adding at the end, I only brought my secretary along. With that, he set down his phone, fastened his seatbelt, and prepared to drive straight to the airport. Just as his hand touched the steering wheel, he worried that Giselle and Cherry might overthink it, so he picked up his phone again and deliberately added, You know her, Secretary Wang from the secretarial office. However, after waiting for several minutes, there was still no reply. During the business trip these days, Ollie remained restless, frequently glancing at his phone screen unconsciously during meetings. Yet, the chat history stayed frozen on her last sent message. With no updates whatsoever, he could only desperately speed up his work, single-mindedly focused on finishing early to return home as soon as possible. Finally, Ollie hurriedly returned home. As he opened the front door, he was struck by the overwhelming silence. The living room stood empty. Devoid of its usual warm lighting, the range hood in the kitchen wasn't humming, the familiar aroma of home-cooked meals was absent from the air, and most unsettling of all, the sweet sound of Cherry's nursery rhymes was nowhere to be heard. This eerie abnormality made Ollie's heart sink to the depths. He rushed to Cherry's bedroom, only to find her small desk with an open homework notebook and a diary that contained just one written page. On the homework notebook was an assignment from the teacher asking Cherry to make sentences. Mom took me to the amusement park to play, Mom cooked braised pork for me to eat, Mom gave me a pair of princess shoes. The diary reads, "Today, the teacher asked me why I didn't use Dad in my sentence-making exercise. I didn't know how to answer. I didn't dare say my dad. Crossed out. Uncle doesn't let others know I'm his daughter." Reading this, Ollie's thoughts were instantly pulled back to a day not long ago. That day when he came home, Cherry suddenly sidled up to him, fawningly coquettish in her affection. "Uncle, can I use you to make sentences in the future? Otherwise, lots of people say I don't have a dad." Ollie remembered how utterly distressed he'd been after reading Edith's lengthy message, whose core message was her intention to bring the child back, so when Cherry spoke those words, his face instinctively hardened as he stared coldly at Cherry, rejecting her in a completely emotionless tone. "No, you can't. If you dare tell anyone I'm your father, I'll abandon you and send you to an orphanage." Recalling these memories, Ollie felt utterly frustrated, but it didn't matter, he thought. From now on, Cherry could write whatever she wanted. He would never interfere again, nor would he hide Cherry's existence. He would take Cherry to every corner of the world, introducing her to all his family and friends. With this thought, Ollie carefully restored Cherry's homework and diary to their original places, then couldn't resist glancing at his phone again. He was a bit puzzled. Why hadn't they arrived home by this time? Was the traffic too heavy? Maybe he should go out to meet them. Yet, just as he stepped out the door, he saw Edith holding Noah's hand, walking uninvited through the doorway. "Daddy Ollie, Daddy Ollie." Noah excitedly rushed over, throwing himself onto his leg and clinging tightly, looking up at her with adoring eyes. "Daddy Ollie, Noah missed you so much. Why haven't you come to see me for so many days?" Ollie forcefully pried away Noah's hands that were tightly hugging his leg, his brows furrowed as he looked at Edith with clear displeasure in his eyes. "Why didn't you say you were coming?" Edith looked somewhat guilty, forcing an awkward smile. "Noah missed you so much. I couldn't talk him out of it. He insisted on coming to see you." Ollie was about to tell them to leave when Noah's loud exclamation cut him off. "Wow, Daddy Ollie, your house is so big. What a beautiful garden," Noah shouted while walking towards the garden. "But why plant cacti in such a beautiful garden?" With that, he casually stepped forward and kicked over the small pot of cactus placed in the corner of the garden. Ollie instinctively reached out to stop him, but was a step too late. Then, Noah turned around and roughly snapped off a rose from the flower bed. "Ouch! These flowers are so prickly. How annoying." He threw the rose violently to the ground and stomped on it repeatedly. Ollie couldn't help feeling angry, shouting loudly as he pushed Noah away. "What are you doing?" Edith saw Ollie's expression change and immediately rushed over to grab Noah, raising her hand to slap him across the face. The child's tender skin reddened and swelled instantly. "Mommy, why did you hit me?" "Wah!" Noah cried out in pain and instinctively clung to Ollie's leg, holding on tightly. "Daddy Ollie, Mommy hit me. It hurts so much." War. In the past, whenever Mom was slightly harsh with him, Daddy Ollie would always stand up for him, so he thought this time would be no exception. Edith didn't stop Noah. She wasn't actually serious about disciplining the child. She just hoped Ollie would feel sorry for Noah and give her some response or favor in return. But this time, it seemed completely different from usual. Then, Ollie crouched down, carefully picking up the trampled and broken rose, and looked sorrowfully at the shattered flower pot before his tone turned utterly impatient. "Edith, take your son and leave here immediately." "Ollie, kids don't know any better. How about this? I'll go to the flower and bird market and buy you an identical replacement." "Alright, what do you know? These cacti and roses were all planted by my daughter's own hands." Edith froze for a moment. Truth be told, in their social circle, once someone got married, everyone would more or less come to know certain details about their situation. It's just that Ollie had always avoided talking about his marriage, so while everyone was well aware of his secret marriage, no one ever explicitly brought it up. Thus, she had always pretended not to know in front of Ollie. Unexpectedly, today Ollie brought it up himself. "Then, how about having Noah apologize to your daughter?" "Okay." Ollie looked at the mess on the ground and suddenly found the mother and son in front of him utterly detestable. Without leaving any room for courtesy, his tone turned icy. This cactus was planted by my daughter with her own hands, when it was just a tiny seed." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "And this rose, she bought it with my wife from the flower market, then transplanted it from the pot. Can your mere apology ever compare to my daughter's tender care?" Noah was displeased and began shouting loudly, "I'll never apologize. That's just a bastard child, utterly unworthy of my apology." "What did you say?" Ollie was stunned, never expecting such vicious words to come from Noah's mouth. Edith turned deathly pale and rushed to cover Noah's mouth, but it was already too late. Noah stood defiant, his face full of arrogance. "That's exactly what my mom said on the phone last night. I heard it myself. My mom said it was her mother who shamelessly seduced Daddy Ollie. That's how she was born, a bastard. Daddy Ollie was supposed to be my father from the start." Ollie couldn't suppress the fury burning in his chest, his deep eyes fixed icily on Noah, his voice dropping to a deadly chill. "Oh, so that's what your mother actually said." Noah felt a bit scared but still mustered the courage to speak loudly. "It's the truth, otherwise. Why wouldn't Daddy Ollie acknowledge her when we set off fireworks outside last time? Doesn't Daddy Ollie hate her too? I'm just helping Daddy Ollie vent his anger." Ollie lowered his eyes slightly, his face now expressionless, the emotions in his gaze unreadable. His thoughts involuntarily drifted back to that night. Cherry's forlorn expression and that injured little hand, like a sharp hook, painfully tugging at his heart. Edith watched Ollie in this state, feeling an inexplicable panic and unease well up inside her. She hurried forward, tightly embracing Ollie as she urgently said, "Ollie, when I first planned to return home, you were the very first person I contacted. I know I didn't do well before, but when I married my ex-husband and went abroad, I really had no other choice. I was pregnant with his child. I couldn't let our baby be born without a father, but every single day abroad, all I could think about was you. I never wanted to be separated from you." As she spoke, Edith seemed to truly immerse herself in the role, her eyes reddening as tears streamed down, soaking Ollie's clothes. She slowly distanced herself from Ollie, gently placing her hands on his face, her gaze fixed directly into his eyes. "I do love you, Ollie. Come back to me, won't you?" Ollie grew paler, quietly returning the gaze at the Edith who seemed both familiar and strange before him. He had no idea how much time had passed when he pushed Edith away, his throat dry as he forced out a sentence. "Edith, I've realized, I think I don't love you anymore." The moment the words left his mouth, his mind became startlingly clear. Yes, his love for Edith was like that little street-side shop near his university, something he'd been nostalgically clinging to all this time. "But when I finally made time to go and try it, I found the taste far from what I remembered, instantly. It felt bland and unappealing, and I no longer yearned for it." Ollie forcefully pushed Edith away, taking several steps back, his expression turning completely distant, his eyes dark and unreadable. "Take Noah and leave. There's no need to say anything more. If there are any further financial compensations, I'll contact you." Edith stared at him in disbelief. "Ollie, what do you mean by this? You're joking, right? And it's just such a small matter. No need to make it sound so serious." Ollie had no patience to listen further and cut her off without hesitation, his tone icy. "I'm not joking, and I'm already married. There's no way I can marry you." Edith forced an awkward smile and said with feigned generosity, "It's all right, I can wait for you to get divorced. We can still get married, right? I can." However, Ollie remained completely unmoved, his attitude resolute as he interrupted Edith once again. "Please leave immediately, if there's nothing important in the future. Don't come looking for me again. I can't be Noah's father. From now on, he should just call me uncle." With that, he signaled to the bodyguard at the door with his eyes. The bodyguard immediately understood and stepped forward, looking at Edith and her child. Edith, I'll escort you back." Edith felt dazed, unable to comprehend how things had come to this. Meanwhile, Noah remained clueless and confused, hearing they had to leave immediately. He grew extremely upset and began throwing a tantrum. I won't go back, Mommy. I want to stay with Daddy Ollie. I don't want to leave, I want to live here." "Wara," he cried while throwing himself at Ollie's legs again, wailing loudly. Ollie frowned and pushed him away mercilessly. Noah stumbled, lost his balance, and fell onto his bottom. "Don't call me Daddy Ollie anymore. I only have my daughter as my child. It's time for you to go back to your own home." Edith picked up the wailing Noah with heartache, tearfully reprimanding Ollie. "I've loved you for so many years. How could you lose your temper with me over just a couple of potted plants? What has Noah done wrong? He only wanted a little fatherly love from you." At this moment, his patience had completely run out. Having no mood to continue this farce, he ordered the bodyguards to forcibly remove Edith and her son. The house was finally quiet again. Ollie took a deep breath, trying to calm himself, then headed to the garage to get the car and drove straight to his daughter's kindergarten. Ollie arrived at the kindergarten gate to find the place deserted, with almost no one left inside. He quickly got out of the car and saw the principal seeing off the last child lingering at the entrance. Rushing forward, he anxiously asked, "Hello, may I ask if Cherry is here?" The kindergarten director looked him up and down, eyes filled with suspicion. "Who do you think you are?" "I'm her father." "Father? Wasn't her father killed in a car accident?" "Who are you really?" Ollie explained guiltily. "It's all a misunderstanding. Blame me for being too busy with work and rarely having time to spend with her. I waited at home for a long time today but didn't see Cherry and her mother return. I was really worried, so I came to check if something had happened." The kindergarten director looked meaningfully at this gentle and refined yet somewhat disheveled man before her. "Just got home today, but Cherry's mother had already completed the withdrawal procedures for Cherry a week ago. You'd better ask the child's mother about this. Anyway, they're no longer here now." Unable to find Gazelle and her daughter, Ollie returned home with a heart full of disappointment and in utter dejection. The moment he stepped through the door, he collapsed onto the sofa. Those past moments spent with Gazelle and Cherry erupted in his mind like a volcanic explosion. It felt as if scalding magma had instantly flooded his chest, carrying with it every precious memory that now churned and boiled relentlessly in his heart. Unable to reach Gazelle and the others, Ollie could no longer focus on work. He simply waited in the living room, desperately hoping they would return on their own. Yet from afternoon until nightfall, there was still no sign of them. Finally, dragging his heavy body, he walked into the study. Intending to send an email to Gazelle from his private mailbox, as he turned on the computer, an email from Gazelle a few days ago caught his eye. The title of the attached file stood out starkly: Divorce Agreement. Ollie stared at these 5 bold characters, instantly petrified like a wooden chicken. His heart pounded violently, and his eyes instantly reddened. An overwhelming sense of loss crashed over him. He felt a dense, spreading pain radiate from his chest, the grief in his heart nearly suffocating him. For a moment, he was utterly at a loss, staring blankly at the computer screen before him at that concise yet bone-chilling divorce agreement. Slowly, the scene before his eyes grew blurry. When Ollie came to his senses, he realized his face was wet. He raised his hand to touch his face, only to find it already wet with tears. He knew how deeply he had hurt them these past years by making no effort to conceal his disgust toward them. But he had never imagined they would leave him with such resolute finality. No, he absolutely would not sign. He refused to agree to this divorce. Ollie wiped away her tears, trying to calm herself before picking up her phone to call her supervisor Gazelle. The phone rang for a long time before it was finally answered. "Ollie, I'm really sorry about that. I was in the middle of an extremely important meeting and couldn't get away." Her voice carried a note of apology. "It's been so long since we last spoke. Was there something you needed from me?" Ollie tried to phrase it as tactfully as possible. "Well, I was wondering if Ms. Gazelle is available. There's something I'd like to ask her." "Gazelle? She's already left the company. Said she was taking her daughter to live abroad." "What, abroad?" Ollie was utterly shocked, unable to keep her voice from rising. After a pause, the voice on the other end continued. "They left several days ago. She said her wife had passed away, and she wanted to take her daughter out to see the world, to broaden their horizons, not to be trapped in this small place forever. Most likely, they won't be coming back." Ollie couldn't contain her anger and demanded, "Why didn't anyone tell me? Do you know where she went?" The other person sounded awkward. "Ollie, look at what you're saying. The project she was originally following wasn't signed to the Milan family. After that, the two sides simply stopped collaborating. If one of my subordinates resigns, it's not necessary for me to specially call and report to you, is it? As for where exactly she went, we truly don't know." Ollie laughed silently, tears streaming down his face as he laughed. He laughed at his own foolishness, and at how he hadn't known to cherish what he had back then. He could have had an enviably happy family, but now it seems truly ruined by his own stubbornness from back then. "Ollie, what exactly is the matter? If it's work-related, you can just tell me directly. I've already arranged for someone to take over Gazelle's other projects." Ollie took a deep breath. Knowing it would be futile to press further, he forced himself to perk up and replied, "It's not work-related. Let's leave it at that for now. I won't disturb you further." Gazelle and Cherry have been in country for over half a month. From deciding to leave to actually setting off, it took only 2 short days, so they initially had to stay in a hotel. Considering Cherry needed to attend school, Gazelle focused her search on single-level homes in the city, giving up on the idea of suburban villas. Finding a house that met all their needs wasn't easy. Gazelle searched for many days before finding a satisfactory one. Cherry's favorite game is playing house. So Gazelle bought many adorable food items and various miniature furniture models to keep at home. She thought that in the future, if Cherry made new friends, she could invite them over to play together. Sure enough, Cherry loved it and excitedly exclaimed, "Mom is the best mom in the world." The interior design style here is vastly different from back home. Back in China, since Ollie only favored minimalist styles, even Cherry's nursery was entirely white. Devoid of the warmth typical of a girl's room, it looked more like a guest room instead. This time, however, Cherry's nursery was entirely her own design, decorated in pink tones with all sorts of adorable plush toys, radiating coziness. Once the house was mostly settled, Gazelle enrolled Cherry in school, which soon began. Since Cherry had previously attended an international kindergarten, she adapted quickly to her new school, communicating effortlessly with her classmates and enjoying every day to the fullest. Although Gazelle's savings over the years were enough for her and Cherry to live carefree for several lifetimes, one cannot remain idle, lest they fall into emptiness. Thus, after properly arranging everything for Cherry, she also began job hunting, leveraging her extensive project experience accumulated at a domestic listed company. Many firms quickly extended interview invitations upon receiving her resume. Among them, a company just steps away from her new home with the most competitive salary package became Gazelle's top choice. The interview ended, and they offered her the job on the spot, so Gazelle didn't hesitate any longer and made the decision right away. After returning home, Gazelle took out her old phone that had remained shut off since she turned it off. Having been using the new phone she bought before leaving all this time, she had many project clients with branches in country R. And this time, she opened the old phone intending to transfer the client data to the new one. Unexpectedly, as soon as she logged into WeChat, she saw Ollie's messages popping up incessantly. "Gazelle, I miss you all. Where on earth have you gone? I was wrong before. Will you forgive me? I've already made things clear with Edith. I only need you and Cherry. Please come back, okay? I won't stop Cherry from calling me Dad anymore. From now on, let's live happily as a family of 3. Alright, I won't sign the divorce papers. I'll wait for you to come to your senses and return." Gazelle stared expressionlessly at the hundreds of WeChat messages, not even bothering to scroll up. After completing the data transfer, she decisively powered off and completely set aside the old phone. "Ollie, where were you all this time? Now, we've begun a brand new life and won't look back anymore." Gazelle shook her head inwardly, pushing Ollie out of her mind and refusing to dwell on it further. Seeing that it was about time, she got up and went downstairs to pick up Cherry from school. After returning home and having dinner, Cherry was happily watching cartoons in the living room. Gazelle opened her email, ready to review the newly assigned work. Unexpectedly, she saw multiple emails from Ollie again. She let out a long, helpless sigh and promptly blocked Ollie's email address. After reviewing the work handover details and feeling more confident, she was about to leave the study to find Cherry when her phone suddenly received a message. It was from her boss. "Gazelle, a business partner from your home country is coming for an inspection tomorrow. You'll be responsible for hosting them. Make sure to secure the preliminary bidding project." Gazelle naturally agreed. Bidding was something she was already quite adept at handling. However, the next day when she arrived at the company and saw Ollie surrounded by a crowd of admirers, she couldn't help but feel a headache coming on. What an incredible coincidence this was. But she had always maintained a clear distinction between professional and personal matters in her mind, so when her gaze met Ollie's, her expression remained composed, betraying not the slightest hint of anything unusual. Ollie gazed at the still composed and collected Gazelle not far away, his heart brimming with joy, his eyes reddening as tears nearly fell. It really was her. Normally, matters like project collaborations wouldn't require the personal attention of someone in his position as chairman, but yesterday, after receiving a call from a friend in country R who claimed to have spotted Gazelle, he immediately decided to come in person. Ollie stared fixedly at Gazelle, walking straight up to her before extending a slightly trembling hand. "Ms. Gazelle, long time no see," only to see Gazelle respond with polite yet distant formality, barely touching his fingertips before quickly withdrawing. "Long time no see, Ollie." Ollie felt a pang of disappointment, instinctively blinking lightly and squeezing his still cold fingertips. Once, Gazelle had cared for him deeply, her gaze always following him, but now, he had lost Gazelle, who had once loved him with all her heart, and it was by his own doing. Filled with remorse, he silently steeled himself, convinced that Gazelle's years of affection for him wouldn't vanish so easily. He was certain he could win her back, step by step. Giselle saw Ollie staring at her in a daze and helplessly called his name several times before lightly touching his shoulder. "Ollie, should we head to the office next?" Sure," Ollie responded as if snapping out of a dream. Giselle led Ollie to her office. No sooner had they sat down than Ollie, who had repeatedly emphasized separating personal and professional matters, was the first to bring up private affairs. "How is Cherry doing now? I'd like to see her." Giselle remained composed, looking straight into Ollie's eyes. "Ollie, it's only been a few days since we last met, and you've already abandoned your principles. Giselle, you know perfectly well who I'm here for." Ollie's voice carried a hint of urgency and grievance. Giselle responded indifferently. "I don't know, nor do I care to know. My willingness to speak with you face to face now is purely work-related. As for other matters, I don't believe we have anything to discuss." Ollie never expected Giselle to be so merciless. His eyes instantly reddening. He truly understood how Giselle must have felt facing his indifference before, making him regret his past heartlessness even more. "I'm sorry, Ollie was just about to speak. Giselle instead pulled out a contract and slapped it onto the table with a smack, cutting him off. "Ollie, are you signing?" However, things didn't develop as Giselle had anticipated. She had thought that given Ollie's temperament, he would simply get up and leave when faced with her attitude. Yet unexpectedly, Ollie obediently signed the document. Outside the office, those who had been eavesdropping on the commotion were equally astonished. The entire conversation lasted less than 5 minutes, and without even going through a bidding process, the contract was directly finalized and signed. Of course, this was just the contract signing phase. For the follow-up project, the company's boss had originally planned to let Giselle handle the negotiations before handing it over to his trusted subordinate to reap the benefits, but Ollie insisted that Giselle must oversee the follow-up. Leaving the boss with no choice but to quietly abandon his plan, Giselle glanced at her watch. It was exactly time to clock out. She completely forgot about what Ollie had told her to wait before going to the boss's office. Right now was exactly when Cherry got out of school. After picking up Cherry from school, just as they were nearing home, Cherry mumbled that she wanted to eat dessert. Giselle looked around and noticed there happened to be a shop nearby, so she took her inside, to her surprise. In this foreign land, she unexpectedly ran into her college classmate Marvin. Marvin was an exceptionally kind boy, always willing to help others. She remembered during college, because Giselle was working part-time while studying, she often couldn't eat on time. During a physical education class, she fainted without warning and was sent to the infirmary. When she woke up, it was Marvin who was by her side. Later, she heard that it was Marvin who caught her in time, preventing her from a worse fall. From then on, they gradually became close, turning into inseparable friends who shared everything, which was why Marvin knew about her romantic situation. It's just that after she got married, the two of them hadn't been in touch for a long time. Giselle stepped forward and initiated the greeting. "Marvin." Marvin looked at Giselle in surprise, then shifted his gaze to Cherry. "What a coincidence. Your daughter's already this big. Where's her father?" Giselle smiled wryly. "You're as direct as ever. Her father and I have separated." Marvin gazed at Giselle, whose beauty remained unchanged, even more radiant than 5 years ago, and couldn't help but feel a wave of nostalgia in his eyes. To mask his emotions, he quickly lowered his head to scan and pack the dessert, then paid with his phone. "Consider it a gift for your child." Giselle shook her head with amusement. "Then when do you get off work? Come over for a meal." Marvin looked up in pleasant surprise, gazing at Giselle. "Really, I've genuinely been craving your cooking." He paused, then added, "This is my own shop. I can close up anytime." Marvin came from a well-off family and never had to worry about making ends meet. After graduating from university, he moved to his dream country and opened this dessert shop. Although everything here was good, he still missed home-cooked meals and could rarely find any that satisfied his cravings. Giselle raised an eyebrow unsurprisingly upon hearing Marvin's words. "Let's go then." Giselle held Cherry's hand and took Marvin home together. Marvin followed Giselle into the familiar elevator. Watching Giselle press the floor button, he couldn't help but sigh. "What an incredible coincidence. I live right above your place." Giselle smiled and patted the head of the silent Cherry along the way, responding, "That's great. You're welcome to come over for meals anytime." Marvin felt a bit embarrassed, but Giselle's cooking was truly to his liking, so he happily said, "You better mean it, no takebacks. I'll pay for my meals on time." Giselle said helplessly, "Marvin, don't be so formal. Come over whenever you feel like eating." The journey was filled with laughter and chatter, and soon they arrived home. The house was tidied up warmly, with an enormous cake plushie placed on the sofa. Marvin widened his eyes in amazement. Wow, Cherry, this plushie is huge. Cherry felt a bit shy but said earnestly, when I grow up, I want to own my own cake shop. Marvin exaggeratedly displayed his joy and agreement. Then Cherry and I really share the same interests. We're definitely going to be great friends. Also, there's a dessert exhibition happening in Country R recently, where masters from around the world will gather to exchange ideas. There'll be all kinds of delicious and unique desserts and cakes. Would Cherry like to go? Cherry's eyes instantly sparkled with anticipation, yet she hesitated and glanced at Gazelle. At that moment, Gazelle had just put on her apron in the kitchen and walked out. Seeing Cherry's eager expression, she said with a smile, "Hurry up and thank Uncle Marvin." Cherry jumped for joy and chirped, "Thank you, Uncle Marvin." Marvin was charmed by Cherry and couldn't resist gently ruffling her hair. Beaming as he said, "You're welcome," Gazelle watched Cherry, who hadn't been this happy in a long time, and decided to let Marvin choose the menu for dinner tonight. "Marvin, what would you like for dinner tonight?" Marvin's eyes lit up as he looked at Gazelle, mentioning a few dishes she used to make during their college days that he had never forgotten. "I'd love to have those signature dishes you used to make, do you still remember them?" Gazelle drew out a meaningful "oh," teasing. "After all these years, you're still such a foodie." With that, she prepared to take off her apron and head to the supermarket to buy ingredients. Marvin stepped right up, reached around her neck to help untie and remove the apron, smiling as he looked at Gazelle. "Chef, Cherry and I will be waiting for you at home." The words carried a hint of ambiguity, but Gazelle merely smiled helplessly before heading out. She knew Marvin, this guy loved to talk big and act bold, but in reality, he was just a chatterbox. Now only Marvin and Cherry were left at home. Marvin effortlessly scooped up Cherry and settled on the couch, launching into vivid tales of the amusing incidents he'd encountered while running his shop and how he'd resolved them. Cherry listened with great interest, her eyes filled with admiration. Before long, the doorbell rang. Marvin couldn't help muttering, "Your mother shouldn't be back so soon. Did she forget something?" With that, he got up and walked toward the door. Marvin peeked through the peephole and was surprised to see Ollie. He wasn't particularly keen on opening the door, but since Ollie was Cherry's father, likely here to visit Cherry, he opened it anyway. Ollie frowned the moment he saw him. "Who are you?" Though Marvin had intended to be polite, the other's rudeness made him roll his eyes in spite of himself. "Who do you think you are? What do you want?" Ollie narrowed his eyes and commanded coldly, "Step aside. I need to go in and find my daughter Cherry." Cherry immediately recognized who it was upon hearing that familiar voice call her name, but she truly didn't want to see her uncle again, so she pretended not to hear and turned on the TV to watch cartoons. Marvin frowned, turned to look at Cherry, and sensed that Cherry didn't want to see Ollie. Moreover, Ollie's commanding tone was really unpleasant to hear. "I don't think Cherry wants to see you. Does Gazelle know you're here? If you came uninvited, I can't let you in." Ollie stared straight at the man he'd never met before, his eyes burning with unwilling anger. "What do you mean by uninvited? My wife's home is my home. I can come back whenever I want." Marvin was stunned for a moment, then said, "What wife? Gazelle already said she's broken up with you." Ollie responded disdainfully, "We're not divorced yet, so of course she's still my wife." Marvin knew Gazelle well. If she said they were separated, then they were definitely separated. Never thought the day would come when the always aloof Ollie would grovel so pathetically to win someone back. "Your marital affairs are none of my business, but you can't come in now. Gazelle will be back soon. Ask her if she'll allow you inside. Besides, can't you see Cherry's attitude? She clearly doesn't want to see you." Ollie felt his face burn as if slapped, yet still managed to say through clenched teeth, "I'm her biological father. Cherry, how could she possibly not want to see me?" His voice gradually rose in volume, as if trying to conceal something. "Cherry, she's just a little angry with me. Let me in, I just want to see her." He simply couldn't accept the fact that his daughter refused to acknowledge him. His heart felt clenched by an invisible fist, the pain so intense it nearly stole his breath away. Only at this moment did he truly realize how much harm his heartless and indifferent attitude had caused to Cherry. Thinking of this, Ollie shouted loudly, trying to make Cherry inside the house, who refused to turn back, hear his remorse. "Cherry, Dad was wrong. Dad will never be like before again. Won't you give Dad one more chance?" As he spoke, he was about to push past Marvin, who was blocking his way, and rush into the house. "Get out of my way, I'm going in." Cherry turned around and saw her father, who had lost his usual elegant demeanor and appeared nearly deranged. Terrified, she couldn't help but sob quietly. Marvin wore a complicated expression as he reached out and firmly pressed his hand on Ollie's shoulder, stopping him at the door. He secretly regretted not calling Gazelle first before deciding whether to open the door. "Ollie, calm down, I told you to wait until Gazelle comes back." With that, he abruptly exerted force and slammed the door shut with a loud bang. Marvin ignored the incessant knocking at the door and hurried to Cherry's side. He held her tightly in his arms, gently patting and soothing her while pulling out his phone to call Gazelle. "Gazelle, have you finished buying the ingredients? If so, come back quickly. Ollie somehow found his way here and is knocking non-stop at the door. Cherry isn't doing too well at that moment." Gazelle had just finished paying and was about to head back when she received Marvin's call. Her eyes instantly turned icy. She hadn't expected Ollie to be so shameless as to come looking for them this soon, let alone figure out a way into the residential compound. At that moment, she strode hurriedly toward home and soon reached her doorstep. Ollie heard the elevator ding and immediately knew Gazelle had returned. He rushed to Gazelle, who had just stepped out of the elevator, and without giving her time to react, righteously demanded, "Who is that man? Why is he in our house? We're not divorced yet. Do you realize this counts as marital infidelity?" Gazelle heard this and laughed in anger. "Ollie, how dare you talk to me about marital infidelity? You have no right to speak to me like that. Besides, I've already sent you the divorce papers. We have no relationship whatsoever. Leave, you're not welcome here." Ollie trembled uncontrollably from these words, yet still stubbornly stared at Gazelle. "I won't sign the divorce papers. Without that certificate, you can't leave me." Gazelle took several deep breaths, forcing herself to stay calm. "Ollie, can't we just part on good terms?" Ollie's eyes were bloodshot, his entire being consumed by overwhelming grief. "No, I refuse. I want you and Cherry to come home with me. Give me one more chance, okay? I promise I'll never be like before again." Gazelle shook her head helplessly. "We've given you too many chances already, and now we really can't afford to give any more. Once this project is over, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to get divorced." Ollie saw the determination in Gazelle's eyes, and tears instantly blurred his vision. The unspoken words stuck in his throat like a fishbone, leaving him unable to utter another word. Ollie stared blankly at Gazelle, but she avoided him as if he were a venomous snake, not even glancing his way as she carried the groceries straight home. In all his years, Ollie had never felt so utterly powerless. He knew full well the fault lay entirely with himself, yet he'd naively believed they would always be there waiting for him to turn back. At this moment, Ollie stood dazed and unsteady, first retreating several steps before leaning against the wall and sliding slowly down to sit helplessly on the ground. Torrential tears blurred his vision as his heart seemed pierced by countless needles, the pain so acute it nearly stole his breath. He had truly come to deeply recognize his mistakes, so why couldn't they just turn back to look at him? So this was the heart-wrenching, bone-deep pain of being ignored by someone you loved dearly. Gazelle entered the house, first giving Cherry a gentle hug, then signaling to Marvin to stay with Cherry, whispering that if necessary, he could take her to the bedroom and distract her with something else. Marvin heard muffled sobbing at the front door, then glanced at Cherry beside him who kept turning up the TV volume louder and louder. Feeling utterly helpless in his heart, he could only gently stroke Cherry's head, trying to soothe her emotions and help her gradually calm down. Marvin truly didn't expect that Gazelle could be so resolute toward Ollie. After all, he had personally witnessed how much Gazelle loved Ollie. Since the dishes she was preparing were quite complex, Gazelle spent nearly 2 hours busy in the kitchen before emerging. Her expression was calm, as if nothing had just happened, calling out to the two figures, one big, one small, sitting on the sofa, "Come eat." Marvin held the subdued Cherry, settling her into her special high chair before heading into the kitchen to help bring the prepared dishes to the table. However, after Ollie's outburst, the atmosphere that should have been lively turned somewhat dull. Marvin took the initiative to break the silence. "Wow, Gazelle, your cooking skills are even better than in college. This is absolutely delicious." Gazelle curved her lips slightly and responded, "If it's good then eat more. I know you've got a big appetite. No leaving until you finish everything." Marvin replied with feigned helplessness, "Mission accepted, chef." After speaking, he glanced at the still silent Cherry and brought up that dessert exhibition again. "I just went to ask, the dessert exhibition is this Saturday. I'll take you all there when the time comes." Marvin noticed Cherry's gaze had regained some spark, no longer as downcast as before, so he added, "I heard there'll be a 3-meter-tall fondant cake made by a master pastry chef. Cherry, you and Mom just wait at home for me to pick you up." Cherry was instantly intrigued, staring unblinkingly at Marvin as she asked curiously, "Uncle Marvin, how tall is 3 meters? Is it as tall as my doll?" Marvin affectionately tapped Cherry's tiny nose and said with a smile, Yes, even taller than your mom and me. Cherry opened her mouth in astonishment, in her eyes. The 188 cm tall Marvin was practically a giant. Wow, that's really tall. Gazelle shook her head with an amused smile as she listened to their conversation. Before they knew it, the meal had returned to the lively atmosphere they had initially envisioned, with everyone chatting and laughing for 2 full hours. After dinner, Cherry ran off to continue watching cartoons, while Marvin helped Gazelle clear the table. Later, Marvin and Gazelle sat with Cherry watching cartoons while reminiscing, sharing stories of the past and all the changes that had occurred during their time apart. After what felt like an eternity, Marvin noticed the sky outside gradually darkening. So he got up, took his clothes, bid farewell to Gazelle and Cherry, then left for home. These past few days, Gazelle went to work as usual, and Ollie hadn't come to harass her again, allowing her constantly tense heart to gradually relax. Soon, Saturday arrived. Marvin knocked on Gazelle's door only to find the mother and daughter already packed and waiting for him. He couldn't help but shake his head with an amused smile. Let's go, time to set off. Cherry excitedly grabbed Gazelle's hand and ran over to Marvin. The 3 of them got in the car and were soon on their way, and not long after they left, the building welcomed a new resident. Ollie appeared downstairs. During these days at the hotel, he had given it careful thought. Last time he had been too hasty and behaved improperly, but now he knew exactly what he truly wanted, so he spent a fortune to buy the apartment below Gazelle. He firmly believed that there would be plenty of time to make Gazelle and Cherry change their minds. On the way to the dessert exhibition, Marvin enthusiastically explained the details of the event to Gazelle and Cherry. This exhibition, as usual, will display some fondant art cakes made by master chefs in the front hall for everyone to admire and photograph. The back hall offers various specialty desserts to sample, along with prepared ingredients. Allowing everyone to create their own custom cake to take home, Cherry grew increasingly excited as she listened, since apart from playing house, she had never actually made a real cake before. Uncle Marvin, will you teach me and Mom how to make cakes when the time comes? Marvin readily agreed. Of course you can. Just like that, the 3 of them chatted back and forth, and the long journey didn't leave them feeling weary. Upon arriving at their destination, they walked into the hall. Marvin had mentioned earlier, the 3-meter-tall cake was placed right in the center of the front hall, with many people gathered around taking photos to commemorate the moment. Gazelle had been following behind Marvin and Cherry, occasionally taking out her phone to capture their beautiful moments. After touring the front hall, it was nearly noon, so the trio quickened their pace to the back hall to enjoy the dessert buffet and fill their stomachs. Later, Marvin led them to the crafting station. Since he was an invited guest, the staff had been notified in advance and had prepared the materials for them. Marvin first guided Cherry and Gazelle through making a few small desserts for practice before officially starting on the cake. With the trio's combined efforts, a cake gradually took shape. Cherry, overflowing with joy, hugged Marvin with dependence and admiration. Thank you, Uncle Marvin. I'm so happy today, Marvin responded gently. You're welcome, Cherry, you're truly talented. Gazelle looked down at Marvin, who was earnestly helping Cherry choose cake decorations and packaging. He exuded a warm and gentle aura that inexplicably brought a sense of comfort. Seeing Cherry so relaxed and happy, Gazelle also felt her joy rising. Marvin noticed Gazelle's smile and suddenly said, Gazelle, you're still so beautiful when you smile. Gazelle paused for a moment, instinctively touching the corner of her mouth. Cherry looked at Gazelle curiously and asked innocently, Mommy, why is your face turning red? Gazelle was momentarily at a loss and didn't respond to either of them, only reaching out to vigorously ruffle Cherry's head. Cherry pouted and swatted away Gazelle's hand. Mom, don't mess up my hairstyle. Gazelle subconsciously glanced at Marvin, and the 2 locked eyes, unable to suppress their laughter. At this moment, a warm and joyful atmosphere enveloped them, as if all their troubles had faded away, leaving only this beautiful moment. After packing up the cake and desserts they had made, the 3 of them prepared to head home. Marvin, I really have to thank you today for taking Cherry out to relax. Marvin blinked his eyes. Chef Gazelle, if you really want to thank me, then treat me to another meal. I'll bring the ingredients. And so, the 3 of them didn't head to a restaurant or go their separate ways home, but instead went to the supermarket together. Inside the supermarket, Marvin held Cherry's hand as they walked ahead, eagerly picking out snacks and ingredients they wanted, while Gazelle followed behind, pushing the shopping cart. Just then, Ollie spotted them from a distance, the 3 of them looking like a close-knit family. He hurried forward, reaching out to pull Cherry away from Marvin's side. Cherry, Daddy's here. Gazelle frowned tightly and hurried forward to block Ollie. What are you doing here, Ollie? I thought I made myself very clear that day. Ollie instinctively avoided Gazelle's questioning gaze, looking past her at Cherry and Marvin's clasped hands, feeling a pang of bitterness in his heart. Cherry, don't you want Daddy anymore? Cherry looked at the suddenly appearing Ollie, rubbed her slightly itchy eyes, and whispered, Uncle, it was you who didn't want me anymore. You only wanted to be Noah's daddy. Ollie, hearing this, thought Cherry still had feelings for him and quickly interrupted her, not letting her continue talking about the past. Daddy didn't. Daddy has already made things clear with Noah's mom. Cherry, Dad will never do that again. Dad truly knows he was wrong. Dad misses you so much and regrets everything he did before. Cherry, can you give Dad one more chance? Come back to Dad's side, okay? However, Cherry avoided Ollie's gaze and responded loudly, No, you're not my dad. I don't want you to be my dad ever again. Ollie stared at Cherry in disbelief, instinctively scolding, Cherry, how could you say that? I'm your real father. He then pointed at Marvin. Did he teach you to say that? Only your real father wouldn't harm you. Don't be fooled by him. Marvin listened, rolling his eyes dramatically in speechless exasperation. Clearly, it was Ollie who had cheated and was now playing daddy to someone else's child, yet here he was turning the tables. He felt Cherry's small hand in his icy cold and clammy with sweat. Looking down, he saw the smile had vanished from her little face, replaced by overwhelming sorrow. Without hesitation, he scooped Cherry into his arms, letting her bury her face against him, then signaled Gazelle with a glance that they'd finished selecting items and could leave. Ollie stood there with a sorrowful expression, watching helplessly as his wife and child walked away with that man. Growing more distant from him by the moment, the three of them didn't spare Ollie another glance as they left without looking back. After returning, no one mentioned what had just happened, but tonight, Marvin drank some alcohol. His drinking capacity was actually quite good. He just wanted to use it to bolster his courage. Sweetie. Gazelle heard Marvin's unusual term of endearment and couldn't help but feel her heart skip a beat. She instinctively stood up, avoiding Marvin's gaze, and directly picked up Cherry, saying it was Cherry's bedtime and telling Marvin to make himself at home. Her sole focus now was raising Cherry well. She had absolutely no interest in romance. Marvin could tell exactly what Gazelle was thinking from her reaction. Feeling somewhat dejected, he leaned back in his chair, drinking one glass after another. After who knows how long, Gazelle came downstairs to find Marvin slumped over the table, surrounded by empty liquor bottles. The sight made her temples throb as she walked over helplessly and gently patted Marvin on the back. Marvin, wake up, let me take you home. Marvin turned around, wrapped his arms around Gazelle's neck, and whispered softly by her ear, Sweetie, can't you just turn around and look at me? I've been waiting right here for you all this time. Gazelle felt her breath catch upon hearing these words. You're drunk, Marvin. Marvin lifted his slightly flushed face and stared deeply at Gazelle's face. After a long silence, he suddenly smiled and changed the subject. Want to go skiing tomorrow? It'd be a shame to visit Country R without skiing. Just the right time to take Cherry out for some fresh air. The sudden change of topic left Gazelle stunned, cutting off her intended refusal mid-thought. Marvin spoke again. Come with us. If you don't join me, Cherry will want to go too. Gazelle didn't know what had come over her to actually agree to it. The next day, Cherry woke up to the news of going skiing, and her previously low spirits instantly soared. She had never been to a ski resort before. Meanwhile, Ollie, still determined to visit Gazelle's place, saw the trio driving off to who knows where and hastily rushed to the garage to follow them in his car. There were many people on the ski slope. Cherry looked at the bustling crowd and the snowy slopes all around, her face brimming with excitement and curiosity. Gazelle bent down to adjust her scarf, helped her put on the children's ski suit and protective gear she had just brought from work, then went to assist Marvin with putting on the right elbow guard. Is this okay? Not too tight. The enthusiastic staff member passing by couldn't help but say something when seeing the heartwarming family of three before them. Sir, you and your wife make such a lovely couple, and your child is adorable. Marvin laughed and, before Gazelle could speak, quickly thanked the staff member for the compliment. Cherry looked at her mother, then at Uncle Marvin. She asked Gazelle in confusion, Mom, is that Uncle saying Uncle Marvin is my dad? Then, she immediately asked Marvin, Uncle, do you want to marry my mom? As long as you can make Mom happy, I agree to you being together. The child's innocent and blunt words instantly made the two adults feel awkward. Gazelle twitched her lips and quickly grabbed a nearby child's helmet to put on the little one's head, cutting off Cherry who was about to speak again. Marvin replied with a smile in his eyes, Really? Then I'll thank Cherry in advance. Ollie only found the three of them at this moment. Giselle frowned at the sudden appearance of Ollie before her. Are you following us, Ollie? Afraid that Giselle might coldly send him away again, evaded the question. Not at all. Can't I come to this ski resort just because you're here? With that, he provocatively glanced at Marvin. Want to ski together? I have a lot to say to you. Marvin stopped Giselle from refusing on his behalf and agreed meaningfully. Sure. He turned sideways to look at Giselle and said, Sweetie, don't worry, leave everything to me. But in the end, at Giselle's insistence, Marvin and Ollie didn't go to the intermediate slope. Instead, the four of them went to the beginner's slope together. Giselle took Cherry to the other side, where they followed the instructor to learn some basic moves. Marvin and Ollie started chatting while warming up. Ollie was the first to speak softly. Giselle and I have been married for 5 years. I heard she had feelings for me back in college. She's only seeking comfort from you now because I hurt her too deeply. If you're smart, you should walk away on your own, Marvin replied calmly. We were college classmates. Back then, we were very close friends, so I've known about you for a long time. I also knew about her feelings for you back then. Ollie grew somewhat angry. You knew, and you still chose to interfere with us. Marvin glanced at Ollie, who was on the verge of losing his temper again. You'd better get this straight. You were the one who cheated first, weren't you? Let me say it again. You have no right to judge our relationship. The only reason I'm having this conversation with you isn't to argue about Giselle, because she's long since stopped having any feelings for you. Do you remember those days you spent drowning yourself in bars after your white moonlight left? Do you still think to this day that it was Giselle who drugged you just to have you? Actually, you were being targeted by someone, and it was Giselle who saved you. No need to question how I know this, that bar just happens to be owned by my family. As for what happened between you two, it was you who actively asked Giselle to stay. At that time, Giselle had already walked out to the hallway, but you ran out and stopped her. Ollie somehow suddenly found the vast expanse of Snow White before him too glaring, stinging his eyes until they ached. Marvin had mentioned that matter, though in truth Giselle had told him about it many times before. But subconsciously he refused and didn't want to believe it, as if only by doing so could he justify hurting Giselle, ignoring Giselle's devotion to him, and overlooking how Cherry relied on him. He suddenly didn't feel like talking to Marvin anymore, so he evaded the conversation by sliding forward, but his weakened body caused his balance to falter, sending him tumbling downward. Marvin instinctively reached out to catch him, only for both of them to fall together. Marvin, uncle. Marvin felt the world spinning wildly, unsure how many times he and Ollie had tumbled. Fortunately, this was the beginner's slope, so the incline wasn't too steep, and they soon came to a stop on level ground. The right arm that had been pulling Ollie now ached intensely, making Marvin let out a soft groan. Giselle handed Cherry over to the instructor and quickly skied down, reaching Marvin to help him up while asking with urgent concern, Marvin, how are you feeling? Where did you fall? Marvin struggled to sit up, leaning against Giselle. My arm hurts so much. Giselle's face changed color as she urgently directed the arriving staff to place him on the stretcher they had brought, without a spare glance at the other side, where the staff had similarly placed Ollie on a stretcher. The two were taken to the hospital together by ambulance for treatment. Giselle took Cherry home, arranged for a friend to look after her, and then rushed to Marvin's hospital room. Marvin, how are you feeling? Marvin looked aggrieved. It hurts so much. Giselle scolded Marvin with a pained expression. I saw everything. You shouldn't have pulled Ollie like that, understand? And what exactly did you say to him? Look how upset he was. Marvin replied calmly. It was about that misunderstanding involving you. I had to make him see reason so he'd stop bothering you. Giselle fell silent for a moment, then fixed Marvin with an intense stare that made Marvin squirm internally. I'll finalize the divorce certificate arrangements with him later. Marvin was startled, his eyes lighting up as he suddenly felt the pain in his arm vanish. Seriously, after your divorce, we can go get our marriage certificate right away. Giselle didn't respond, merely pulling the blanket up a little higher for him. Go to sleep and rest now, I'll go talk to him. With that, she rose and left Marvin's hospital room, heading next door to Ollie's ward. Ollie saw Giselle enter, his eyes lighting up with delight, yet her next words plunged him into an icy abyss. Once you've recovered from your injuries, we'll return home to finalize the divorce. Ollie subconsciously shook his head. Giselle said calmly, I have no feelings left for you, haven't you realized that already? I can wait. I'm willing to wait forever, until you change your mind. Hearing this, Giselle couldn't help but laugh. You may be willing, but I'm not. Ollie felt utterly defeated upon hearing this, yet still fought on unwillingly. I know I misunderstood you, I repent, and I promise to devote myself wholeheartedly to our little family from now on. Could you give me one more chance? Giselle remained cold and indifferent, uttering just 2 words. Too late. Ollie turned pale, clinging to his last shred of hope. We've been married for 5 years. You've loved me for so long, I can't believe you're truly willing to separate from me. Giselle closed her eyes, took a deep breath, then looked at Ollie with not a trace of affection in her gaze. I don't love you anymore. That so-called love was completely worn away during those 5 years. Ollie watched, utterly devastated, as Giselle walked away without a hint of hesitation. Memories of the past, of all the hurt he had inflicted upon Giselle and Cherry, came flooding back to him all at once. His guilt and pain were magnified infinitely, forcing out a muffled sob of anguish from his lips. 2 weeks later, Marvin and Ollie had completely recovered from their injuries. Giselle had originally planned for Marvin to wait in country for her and Cherry to return, but he insisted on coming along, so she simply brought him back to their home country. As soon as she returned to the country, Giselle led Cherry and Marvin back to her only residence in the country. After dinner, the 3 of them curled up on the sofa to watch a movie. As they watched, Marvin and Cherry leaned against each other, their eyelids growing heavier until they unknowingly drifted off to sleep. By the time Giselle noticed, the 2 of them were already fast asleep. Giselle gingerly picked up Cherry from beside Marvin and carried her back to the nursery. She then returned to the living room and gently covered him with a blanket. Just as Giselle was about to leave, the drowsy Marvin reached out and grabbed her hand. Giselle paused in her movements, slowly turned around, gently pried his hand away, and tucked it under the blanket. Early the next morning, Giselle contacted Ollie and headed straight to the Civil Affairs office to complete the divorce procedures. This time, Ollie was surprisingly cooperative, and the procedures went smoothly. But right after registration, Ollie regretted it, his eyes turning red as he mumbled something under his breath. Giselle didn't even glance at him before turning to leave. Just as she reached the door, she suddenly heard a voice behind her call out, "Daddy Ollie." Giselle instinctively turned her head and saw Noah rush to Ollie's legs, clinging tightly. Ollie remained expressionless, forcefully pulling Noah away, and said coldly, "Didn't I tell you, stop calling me Dad?" At that moment, Edith quickly approached, took out a ring box from her pocket, opened it, and handed it to Ollie, saying, "Ollie, you're divorced now, marry me." However, Ollie's expression grew even colder. Without even glancing at Edith, he walked away briskly. Giselle had no interest in watching others embarrass themselves and was about to head home. Unexpectedly, Edith suddenly called out to her from behind, "Giselle, wait." Inside the cafe, the 2 sat facing each other. Giselle casually ordered a coffee and looked up at Edith. "What do you want to say?" Edith lowered her eyelids, a slow smile curling at the corners of her lips. "Nothing much. I just wanted to ask how exactly you made Ollie fall for you. I want to win him back." Giselle gazed at the blue sky outside the window and countered ambiguously, "Do you want to win him back, or possess him?" Edith was taken aback, a flicker of displeasure crossing her face. "What do you mean?" Giselle averted her gaze, curling her lips into a cold smile. "Do you have feelings for him? You're just using him to gain the fame and fortune you desire." Edith turned pale with rage and retorted indignantly, "Don't measure others by your own standards. I truly love Ollie." Giselle couldn't help but sneer. "That project, your family embezzled quite a sum, didn't they? Can't cover the shortfall anymore." Edith felt her heart skip a beat. She never expected Giselle to know about this. This was a hot potato, if exposed. She, as the legal representative, would be eating prison food. She forced herself to stay calm and flatly denied it. "What are you talking about? I don't understand. I won that project fair and square. Just because you couldn't compete doesn't mean you can sling mud at me. My conscience is clear." Giselle watched Edith's undignified display, took a leisurely sip of coffee, and added, "Did you have fun pretending to be me?" Edith, startled, bolted upright from her seat. Only when she noticed the odd glances around her did she realize her lapse in composure. She quickly sat back down, frowning as she fixed a piercing stare at Giselle. "What do you know?" Giselle looked calm, casting a meaningful glance behind Edith before saying slowly, "Ollie doesn't know I audited classes at H University. To this day, he still thinks it was you who delivered the documents to help him when he was being unfairly treated, doesn't he?" Edith suppressed her pounding heartbeat, fine beads of sweat forming on her forehead. That's right, she had impersonated Giselle. At first it was just a happy accident, but after Ollie gained so many benefits from it, she quietly accepted it as her due. There was even one time when Ollie bluntly stated that incident was the key to developing affection for her. From then on, she became dead set on claiming the whole affair as her own glorious achievement. Putting on a brave face, she retorted stubbornly, "So what if it is? So what if it isn't?" That's all in the irrelevant past now, nothing worth discussing. Giselle watched Edith's utterly hypocritical display and raised a disdainful eyebrow. In that case, I really have nothing more to say to you. With that, he stood up decisively and strode out. Ollie, who had been sitting behind Edith with his back to her, now slowly walked up to Edith, looking down at her with icy eyes. Edith, just how many things are you still hiding from me? Edith never expected Ollie to appear at this moment. Flustered, she tried to grab Ollie's hand, desperately explaining herself. Ollie, don't believe anything Giselle said, it's all lies. Ollie coldly took a step back. Fix the mess in that project as soon as possible. I don't want to see you in the defendant's seat. Edith felt as if struck by lightning, collapsing weakly into her chair. She could only watch helplessly as Ollie's figure grew more distant, until it vanished from sight. Giselle walked out of the cafe and headed straight home. As she pushed open the door and saw Marvin and Cherry eagerly waiting for her, all the day's troubles instantly vanished into thin air, leaving only boundless warmth in her heart. The day after the divorce, Giselle purchased a pile of gifts and solemnly followed Marvin to meet his parents. That day, she showcased her culinary skills, and with Cherry being so sweet and adorable, coupled with the fact that Marvin's parents had long known their son harbored feelings for a woman, they were overjoyed that he had finally fulfilled his wish and successfully married the love of his life. Everything fell into place, and the two smoothly obtained their marriage certificate. They didn't have a traditional wedding, but chose to travel for their marriage instead. The family of three thoroughly enjoyed touring the magnificent landscapes of their homeland, having the time of their lives, before reluctantly returning to country R. It had been 4 years, Ollie, since we last met. Cherry's school held a financial lecture, claiming it was to broaden the children's knowledge horizons. The invited guest was a young overseas entrepreneur who had also established a scholarship at the school to encourage hardworking students. Giselle immediately guessed who it was upon hearing the name, as expected, on the day of the lecture. The one standing on stage speaking eloquently was none other than Ollie. After the speech, Ollie wanted to meet Cherry, but just as I stepped off the stage, I saw Cherry cheerfully calling out Mom and Dad while holding each of their hands, skipping away happily. Ollie could only stand rooted to the spot, helplessly watching Giselle and her family of three gradually fade into the distance until they completely vanished from sight.